super fan, Big Al Panacchia, incredible judo man. He calls himself an old judo man from Detroit. He's been around a long time and knows a lot of shit. Christiana Landolt, Sensei Ron Waddy, Christine Hussey, and the beautiful, hardworking Pamela Swino, who lives in the same house I do and keeps things under control.
I think you're favoring one of those people.
I
Sensei
definitely,
also, you've
I
been a
definitely
Michigan
am.
guy. I think just adding the term from Detroit to anybody's name gives it some cred. Like Big
I got
Al from
I got the
Detroit.
Detroit, I got the
Like
Motor
it just
City sweatshirt
immediately
on.
makes it sound cool. I'm gonna start stealing that.
That's
Let's go,
right.
Ben.
That's
Let's
right.
do this.
27 points.
All right.
Go.
Thanks, Sensei. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. My name is Sean Benson. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm here with Coach, also Professor Ashten Sawitsky. And as you know, we like to start with a question that we'll start with her, and then we'll go around the horn a bit, get this conversation going. So, Coach, it's so nice to meet you tonight. And I was talking to Sensei Dofan before the show, and he having met you, was just saying what a legit black belt you are in jiu-jitsu. And so the question I want to start with is, when you listen to someone like Faraz Sahabi or John Danaher or Jocko Willings, BJJ has fallen prey to the thing that arguably other martial arts have, which is black belts maybe don't mean for some people what they have meant in the past. And when he was talking about what a legit black belt you are, I thought, what a great place to start with the conversation. So, what do you think about the broad scope of jiu-jitsu, BJJ? And do black belts mean what they used to? Are they better? Are they worse? And for everybody else, when we go around the horn, we won't just talk about BJJ. We'll talk about all our art.
Of course. That's a fantastic question. So I came into the sport 15 years ago, and back then it took a decade at least to get your black belt. Now I'm seeing people rushing through the system, and this term called McDojo has come to light, and I'm seeing people getting their black belts in 4 or 5 years. Now, I'm not going to discredit those practitioners. They may have
I
worked
will.
every single day, but I worked every single day for a very long time, and still it took like many, many years to reach that level. So I think that's very accurate in saying that you can get a black belt pretty quick depending on where you are. So if you're looking for a club, definitely check their credentials before you step on their mats.
So, what do you think that's about? Because I was actually just talking to a couple brown and black belts the other day, and we were like, man, this crop of white and blue belts right now is killer. They're not progressing faster in our club, but they're coming in with not YouTube vid stuff, like real technique. Like there's just a wave coming right now that's great. So what do you think that is where people in certain places are starting to give it away a little quicker?
hmm Like I said, it really depends on the club and how fast they're really working and how much time they're putting on the mats. You could have a very legit black belt at 4 and 5 years, but if they're doing it just to make that dollar like figure, you really have to check how long that gym's been open, who's running it, and just making sure you're making your due diligence. Um, but I think they could get a valid like rank out of it. It's just you have to be cognizant, and it comes to show when a tournament happens and someone has a high rank on them, they're going to get blown through. And it really you get shown on the mats where your rank actually is.
And we are going to go around the horn on this question, but one question we've all talked about, so I won't ask them this, but what do you think makes a BJJ black belt versus a good brown? What do you think that different crust level is that makes it take maybe a decade?
I think it's commitment, but also going into tournaments. I think you have to at least compete it at a tournament at least once before you get a black belt around your waist, because you have to test yourself against the pool of other places, other countries, if you can. But even within Canada, we have so much talent that if you're in a bubble and you don't expand that, you're never going to know if that rank was actually legit.
Right on. Sensei Suino, let's jump to you for this, okay? So you can talk about judo, talk about Iaido, talk about BJJ, talk about your karate. Do you think that people coming in are as good or better? And do you think belts are going out too quick? Or where do you see it as?
Uh, well, let me talk about judo because that's maybe the closest analog to jujitsu. Uh, Athletically, people are better than they've ever been. the top level of sport judo, the top 10% of sport judo is incredible. The athletes are absolutely phenomenal. And of course, you've seen them go into UFC and a lot of folks cross over to BJJ as well. Um, it's probably true anywhere, but there's kind of two camps. Um, I know people that stay at brown belt for a long time in judo. It's probably the same reason people stay at blue and purple belt at BJJ for a long time. And they compete there. Incredible athletes, great fighters. But yeah, there's also a McDojo. I run a traditional martial arts organization, and so we see a lot of people coming through asking for certification and things. And there's a lot of folks who think a year and a half is enough time to ask for a showdown for a first degree black belt. Um, and I suppose that's possible in the world of things in the universe. But I don't remember how long it took me to get I was a kid judo player for a long time, but I, I'd be stunned if someone could meet all the criteria. Great technical martial arts, understanding the character aspects, having won enough competitions to understand, and then achieve a black belt, in less than a number of years. So yeah, there's sort of two camps. One is garbage and unfortunately exists all over the martial arts world, and the other one are serious competitors. And I think it's still every bit as hard as it always has been.
So before we move on from you, Sensei Suino, do you think in judo that the competition is as important as we're talking about with BJJ?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually love what Coach Ashton said. I don't know how you can listen. I promote people to black belt who have had great experience and maybe haven't competed in a big tournament, but they've done a lot of in-house work. I would put them out there in a minute if they wanted to. But personally, for me, I think you need to compete.
Thanks. Sensei Dauphin, let's go to you next. What do you think in terms of either BJJ, in terms of the karate, Iaido, and do you think it's changed? And also kind of what I was talking about, like, do you think the new level of people coming in are better or worse? Is YouTube helping or not? I'm just kind of adding that flavor to the question for you.
I think what Sensei Suino said is right. People coming in nowadays are smarter and better athletes. They have access to more information than we did when we started, and that's a great thing. I still don't think you should be able to get a black belt really fast. I just don't think you should be able to. And if you're listening to me talk right now, I would ask you, why do you want to be a black belt so bad? Like, what is it about wearing that belt
Mm,
that makes you want it so bad, even when you can't do it? Because eventually you're going to have to stand in front of somebody who did spend 8 or 10 years to get their black belt. And you can find out really fast that you're not, right? You're not at that level, right? The belts are just indications of the levels. Um, and when people get a black belt too fast, and again, like, there's the BJ Penns of the world and these people who like, they don't call them the prodigy for nothing, right? Like, but is it about you or is it about your teacher? Do you, does your teacher want you to be a black belt? Do you want to be a black belt? Um, so the places get promoted really fast. I think it's because the teacher wants more black belts. They want more money. They want more whatever. Just love the training. Sense of Legacy always said to me, just love the training, keep your head down and do the training, and the belts are going to come. They're just going to appear around your waist. And I believe that truly. And I also think that be really proud of any belt you get. Like, if you
yes.
had to work for it, be super fucking proud for that thing, man. Like, I don't give out black belts. I also don't give out yellow belts. I also like I do not give out yellow belts. If you get a yellow belt in Legacy Shorin-ryu, you should be damn proud of that. And then be the best yellow belt you possibly can be before you even think about getting a green belt. And maybe don't think about it. Just let somebody else think about it for you.
Mhm.
Well, it's funny. I said this to you, Sensei Dauphin, but the day I got my brown belt, George ties it around my waist, and before he's even pulled the knot, he's like, "Wait for your black belt. It's coming, brother." And I'm like, "Whoa, give me a sec." Like, I'm about to get run through by the black belts who are now calling me out. Like, I want a little time. Like, yes, but no, please no. And I think that's I've talked about this on the show, but even with Tom Hardy, like, he's a real BJJ guy because he was asked on a red carpet, "How's your BJJ going?" And he goes, "Shit, mate," and he just keeps walking. And you're like, that's how you know he's not faking it, because that's a real answer from a guy who's struggling with basic. Hanchi Legacy, where do you go with this? It feels to me in a good way. Like, I might be wrong, and Sensei Ofan, you could correct me for sure, but Hanchi, like maybe the black belt's taken just a little longer for the average black belt in our club. It feels like we're leveling up what our black belts look like.
Yeah. Well, with me, it depends on the school you walk into because there are a lot of good classical martial arts dojos. It's just I don't think that people take their time in choosing the club. Rather pick the one down the street as opposed to having to travel a little way, or as the joke goes, there's a railroad track between their place and the school. And I agree that look at the gyms, the universities, and that they're more up to being in good shape. And most people who want to go into a dojo sort of get themselves ready. And the youth nowadays are in extremely good shape. Um, another thing is when you go into a school, look at the students. Don't look at the teacher who looks great and he knows everything to do to get you attracted. Just sit there, watch a class, and see how the students are doing, because you're never going to be him. You're going to be one of those students, and how they look is what you're going to be like. Right? And the other thing is that you have to look how much, if a person gets a black belt in 4 or 5 years, is that possible? Yes, if he goes how many times a week? He
Yeah.
goes once a week. Whoa. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you still see me?
Yes.
We'll just keep going. Um, so it depends on how much time they spend in a week, right? In the dojo. I went every day the dojo was open. And so did most of you guys that are in my dojo. And then you have, is this a karate guy running a business, or is a business guy running a karate club? You run into a lot of things there where the person just is wanting to take your money and doesn't care if you stick around or not once he has your money. So there's those type of problems. And then finally, time and grade, if you don't do a certain amount of time and grade, you're really not going to rediscover martial arts. Just because your teacher tells you something and you go, oh yeah, I learned that. But it takes years to be able to actually put it into work. And if you don't spend the time in grade uh, and uh, and allow yourself to have the actual experience of rediscovering martial arts, just like the person who invented it, then you're liable to leaving yourself a bit shorthanded. So, and then it all comes down really to the individual who walks in. What are they willing to do, and what are they looking to do? So, I will agree with everyone that karate, depending how long you go a week, you should be able to get a black belt between 4 or 5 or possibly 7 or 8 years. And little kids, in my opinion, before the age of 16 years old, should not be black belts.
Thanks, Hanchi. Appreciate that. It's funny you say that, because in the second week of my first time ever meeting you in those demo classes, I remember thinking that to myself. I was like, okay, this guy's incredible. I'm just going to watch all those black belts standing next to him because he didn't teach himself. And they were all fucking incredible. And I was like, okay, I get to be one of them. Coach Ashton, just one more question for you. How well do you have to do in the competitions, right? Because sometimes you sign up and you might just not be top tier. And a lot of the competitors, especially these days, are getting so good. So do you think that should be part and parcel? Our coach, George Brito, says he likes to see people compete twice a year. throughout any belt rank. But he doesn't say he needs to see them win.
I really don't think you need to win. I just think the anxiety, the experience, and the learning that comes out of that is just, it's unmatched. So just putting yourself in that environment and learning how you react to that really stressful situation is going to change your entire perspective on, I think, any martial art or any sport at that kind of level. So the moment that happens, it changes you for the rest of your life. You're like, I don't know why I'm here. This is really intense, but I'm going to get through it. Win or lose, you're coming out with something, and it's always a positive in the sense of you've learned or you won. It's one or the other. And I know a lot of people hate when you're like, oh, you win or you learn. It's absolutely true. I have had my fair chance or fair like times where I've lost, and I've lost like bad. I lost in 12 seconds when I was in Colombia. Yeah, Colombia for my first tournament for Team Canada. We were in a gold medal match, but the individual that I was fighting was just outstanding, and she was fighting two weight classes above her level, which was what I was in, and I was fighting one weight class above. So she was just one up. So I was heavier than her. She was a black belt and I was purple belt at the time, but that didn't matter at that point. Our belts were red and blue for the competition. And I got my butt just completely handed. She did a flying, like turning armbar while I was getting like tossed to the floor. I was almost tapping on my like mid-air down. But I still loved it. It was an incredible chance to like be an opponent to that kind of talent. So I don't think you need to win. I think you just need that experience.
Oh, I love that because I mean, look, if young Gordon Ryan didn't show up, some guy might have won that day, but instead Gordon Ryan shows up and that guy loses in 12 seconds also. And
Yeah.
that person isn't a worse martial artist for it. And then the last question before we go to our intros, which I'm only gonna um, ask you, is that because we have talked about this a lot, but in the early 90s, 1993, UFC, Hoist Gracie shows up. Jiu-jitsu doesn't blow up, but in the last 5 years, it has. What do you attribute that to? Like, why do you think in the last 5 years, maybe even the last three, it's just gone? Because it's been around. It won from 93 on in a way that people could watch. Why do you think all of a sudden it's the art du jour?
So I read a book called The Tipping Point once, and
Yeah, great book.
it's yeah, and a really amazing book, and it talks about why certain things hit that projection. And I think jujitsu was the sport that hit that projection and that tipping point because enough people started talking about it. So that radial connections, and everyone is connected by six or seven removal of people. So I think enough people started talking about it, and it just hit that tipping point. And now that it's in the actors and actresses are doing it, and they're talking about it. It's in pop genre, it's in everywhere. So I think the fact that people are just talking about it, and the fact they're doing it and realizing how amazing it is, it took off. It was going to take off. It just depended on when.
I love that you mentioned that book. That's such an important one because, when we've talked about other arts, especially with our karate or obviously with Kung Fu in the 70s, it was usually a movie, right? It was usually a period when some movie star came along, including Aikido in the late 80s with Seagal. And this is one that didn't quite have, I mean, John Wick used it, but it didn't have that singular thing. So I think in the internet era, you're absolutely right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. Before I introduce my other co-hosts, I just want to say that if you're with us on the Zoom call, we want you to be a part of our living history that we're creating. Sensei Ofen's just lit up the chat button at the bottom. So please ask your questions for Professor Ashten Sawitsky or anything we're talking about in and around stay on topic with us. We look forward to your chat. And if you're watching on podcast, either visual or listening, or on YouTube, we hope you hit that subscribe and like. Start fighting in the comments. Get provocative. Be a troll. We love it. It's funny what we're talking about here. one of the first things I ever read that was written by someone I knew was an essay that you wrote, Sensei Dauphin, and it was called How Do You Spend Your Time? And it wasn't just about how long you train, it's about how much you train during that time. And my three co-hosts are people who do not stand on the sidelines. They do not tell you what to do. They show you what to do. And Hanshi Legacy is the person from whom I learned show me, don't tell me. And even at our last grading, Hanshi, he had a few changes, or not necessarily changes, but specifics. He didn't describe them. He got down into the deepest stance and he showed all the red and white and red and black belts what he wanted. It was not from his voice, it was from his actions that we all learned it. And the same goes for Sensei Dauphin and Sensei Suino. So I just want to say, I'm really grateful that my co-hosts are my teachers who show me, they don't tell me. Sensei Dauphin, what do you want to say for our intro tonight?
I'm really excited to have Coach Ashton on here. She's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under this little known person, Professor Marco Costa, right? Not little known, he's very well known. We've talked about it a little bit. Coach Ashton has represented Canada on the international stage many times. She's medaled overseas, and I'm not going to talk about the medals, but she has medaled and brought home hardware back to Canada, which I'm proud of and happy about. Um, Alongside her martial arts journey, she also serves as a construction engineering officer in the Canadian Armed Forces. So thank you for your service, Coach. Um, she's also been recognized with the King Charles III Coronation Medal. We do a little bit of research, Coach. Um, um, Her military career reflects the same focus, discipline, and commitment she brings to her training and coaching on the mats. Um, I'm a valuer of education. She has a master's degree in environmental science. My daughter has from the University of Waterloo is also an environmental scientist, and she's a high-level karate person and a blue belt in BJJ. And I want you two to meet each other because I think you guys would uh, really like each other. But she got her degree from, I work at the University of Waterloo, so I'm going to say she got it from another university, the University of Toronto, right? Which is a pretty good school as well. I know you've had some setbacks in your life, Coach Ashton. You don't understand. Your dad and my dad actually, we went through some similar things there. Um, and one of the things that you said about that is looking back, I see not just a sport, but a lifelong companion, talking about BJJ, right? One that has carried me through victories, losses, growth, and change. It has also brought me into a community that has forged lifelong friendships. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu has been the thread weaving together passion, profession, and purpose into a deeply challenging and fulfilling journey. Um, I think that's an awesome quote, and I think it says a lot about you. You and I met at Scott Taylor's, Wrenchy Taylor's. We got to see him get promoted together. It's funny, one day can provide a lot of history for two people. That's where I was like, I really want to have Coach Ashton on Punch Kick Choke Chat. And one thing I want to share with you is when we were on the mat with Coach DeSanto, and you were kind of a little bit smashed up, so you had removed yourself, and there was a person who had some disabilities, and you looked at me and said, "Hey, would you like help this guy?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And I just thought that was really nice that you would recognize that this person needed some help and get them onto the mat with somebody who could maybe work with them a little bit. And I think that also said a lot about you. And I'm super proud to have you on the show and really looking forward to documenting your thoughts and your journey in martial arts. So thanks for coming on.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
So Coach, let's jump right in. So what was it like for you growing up, and what brought you into your first martial arts environment?
Oh, that's deep. So I don't know if any of you know, but I'm actually First Nations as well. So I come from Witchkin Lake First Nations out in Saskatchewan. I never got a chance to actually live on the reserve, but both my mother and my are there now, and I have lots of cousins and family out there. So that came with a lot of interesting challenges for my livelihood because my mother grew up on reserve, and so her goal was to get off because it was very dangerous. There was a lot of issues and trauma stemming situations there, so she left and she took basically her livelihood out of Saskatchewan to Ontario with my past father, basically trying to get away from the whole situation. So my brothers, myself, and my parents at the time moved to Ontario when I was 5 years old. Some really crazy stuff happened. I'm gonna really go through this quickly. Around 8, my brother Jordan, he passed away at 14. He drowned. So that was kind of the last thing of the family to kind of break it apart. And before his passing, we always used to watch Jackie Chan videos and Jackie Chan movies, and we were all obsessed. And in my head, I was like, I want to do martial arts. I want to be like Jackie Chan. I think that's so cool. Um, and then all this stuff started happening, but it was always still in my head. I'm gonna find my martial art, but I never had the chance or the opportunity as I grew up. Um, so once my father or my brother passed, my mother and my father ended up divorcing. Throughout the divorce, my father ended up winning the lottery, which is a weird thing that happened to our lives. And that caused a whole thing in our family. That continued to cause a lot of rifts, and we just didn't have the time to do a lot of sports. Before that, we were also pretty poor. So winning into money was pretty cool, and we started actually being able to do sports and doing like interesting things. But again, I never got into martial arts, and we still watched Jackie Chan. So once I hit 16, I went, I'm gonna get a car, I'm gonna get my license, I'm gonna get a car, and I'm gonna drive myself to like a martial arts school. So I did. By 16, 8 months into being 16, when I got my learner's permit finally, and I could drive like with somebody, I was going to karate every single day. So I started with karate. I ended up getting my my blue belt in karate. And then when I was 17, turning 18, I found jujitsu, and my life was sold. And ever since then, it has been like healing my heart through the many traumas in my life. And it's just been incredible. So that's kind of like the summarized version of my life
Well,
and how I got into it.
yeah, and I'm sorry about your brother. And I just want to ask, don't worry about offending anybody, but what made you go, okay, karate's obviously phenomenal. I'm putting those words in your mouth, but what did you find to BJJ, and how did you mildly or not enjoy your karate experience?
I loved karate. I still practiced it back and forth, but I think my heart just really dived into jujitsu as soon as I did it. Like the very first class I did jujitsu, it was we had a visiting instructor doing a seminar actually, and it was just like everyone who's like here, just come join in on the seminar, see what jujitsu is. And this individual was a black belt at the time, and honestly, I can't remember who they were. I would have to ask my previous practitioners from the club, but I don't remember who it was. But we rolled for the first time. It was my first class, and we rolled, and he was showing me things. I was like, this isn't karate. This is something else, and I love it. So I did both for a little while, but my entire being was like, I need to buy into jujitsu, and so I ended up going off to university and everything. So I just took jujitsu as my sole kind of thing.
Hmm. And let's go back to something you said that's pretty huge. And Sensei Ofan talked about it, and I know it's true for me, but you just said this is part of your healing journey.
Mhm.
And talk as much as you like about that. What is it about going and sweating and grappling and choking and arm barring and getting banged in the face by strangers that healed anything?
It it's a place where you walk onto the mats and everywhere else doesn't exist. The mat is the sole thing, and you are fighting to survive is now your main focus. So because now your focus is on one singular thing or multiple movements, um, all of the external noise just disappears. So when you're rolling, or if you're doing your movements or your katas, like you don't have time to think about everything else. And then your brain has this like moment to relax and reset. And then you come back to it later and you've given it the time to analyze and reset. And so when you walk off those mats, an hour to 3 hours later, you're like, Oh, I feel a lot better. I've released a lot of stress. I've gotten that cortisone. I've released serotonin in really healthy ways. And now I can maybe think about these other stresses in a clearer sight. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, my coach in Los Angeles, he always says, "Why does everyone feel so good after this? It's all the hugging." Um, And also, before I go to Sensei Dauphin, I want to talk about this. The year my mom died, I was 44, 45, and yeah, karate and jiu-jitsu were the only breaks I could get. Like napping wouldn't give me a break from the sorrow. Sleeping didn't feel like it was working. But when I moccasoned into a karate class or went into that jiu-jitsu class, for whatever it was, for that hour, or like you say, 3 hours or two, I got a little break. And I maybe even pushed it too hard. I ended up like popping a rib and this and that, but it was the only place I felt good.
Yeah.
You know, Fat, what do you want to say?
Me, Sean, now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't understand it when I was younger, but that's an immersive experience, right? Like Suino Sensei talks about this all the time. You get into an immersive experience. And I was always the type of person, and it sounds like Coach Ashton is the type of person where it's, hey, something good is happening. I need to get to the dojo or to the gym. Hey, the most catastrophic thing is happening. I need to get to the dojo. I need to get to the gym. So, whatever it is, whether it's good or bad, that should be the thing that wants to drive you to the gym. Like, even to the point, Sean, where you're talking about your parents. I remember when my dad died, that
Mhm.
literally the day my dad died, I went to the dojo and Sawitsky gave me a big hug. And then everybody went up to go start training. And he started strapping his fighting stuff on and said, "Put your fighting stuff on." And I said, "What's going on? What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, you just need to fight all night tonight. You and I are going to go up there and fight." And the day my dad died, Sensei Legacy and I fought for an entire night for like an hour. And when I left, everything was a lot better than it was when I showed up. Like it was a
Mhm.
lot better when I left that day. And I think I didn't know it when I was younger, but I know it now.
Mhm.
You know, when I have students who come to the club and they're crying outside the door, I'm like, hey, get in here. Let's get sweating. Let's get working. You're going to feel better when you leave. They always do. 100% of the time, they leave
Yeah.
better when class is over. 100% of the time.
Sensei Suino, I see you nodding away with very excited eyes at this concept of an immersive experience. Break it open for us.
Well, I think I realized something that I hadn't realized before, and this may be very personal. I don't know if it applies to other people, but I'm an extroverted introvert, right? I love being with people, but I usually recharge alone, walking in the woods, meditating, uh, listening to music. But I just realized something. I get a lot of that same reset that I get walking in the woods alone from rolling or doing randori judo. And I never really thought about that before. Like but it's a social version of that reset. And maybe it's kind of what everybody's talking about, right? You get the oxytocin from the hugs and you get the endorphins from the fight and you get the immersion from the experience. So that's kind of cool. I got to dig into that more, but yeah, there's something really magical about fully immersive martial arts training, and I think everybody on the call understands that.
Well, absolutely. And the other element I want to add is trust. You know, like before I knew I trusted Sensei Dauphin or Hanshi Legacy, I trusted Sensei Dauphin and Hanshi Legacy. I was putting my growth and my journey, but also my literal face in their hands. And when you leave and you've grown and you've learned and you've sweat and you're a little beat up, but you're not actually hurt, that trust just deepens. And a buddy of mine was talking about it in BJJ's like, you've got all these like men's rights groups where they want to like feel aggressive and stuff. And it's like, you can go wrestle with a 300-pound guy. And if they're about to break your arm, you give them two little taps on the butt and they let you go. And they go, nice one, brother. Like, it's this beautiful depth of trust and languaging that's nonverbal. Hanshi, I know you want to add to this, but I want to add a question to yours because Sensei Dauphin has described this moment before, but I'm not sure I've ever asked you. What made you look at this young man who I know you treat as a son and say, put your gear on? Like, you're the one who sort of taught us that. And what made you not say, class is canceled, let's go talk about your feelings?
Well, I'll come at it from the other end. Um, karate is non-stationary meditation, and it's a way of getting yourself together in body, mind, and spirit. And it takes over your entire being in the now. Now is the only time you're living. So if you capture that time, it's like a moving Zen. There is no room for anything else to enter what you're doing. So if you ever, while we were doing that, the kumite is his mind wasn't going to stray to his father, right? Or I was going to be right on him. So, and then after that, he got physically tired, and then he was a little bit more calm, and we could discuss things, and he sort of had retaken over his being by doing that. And um, that's another thing about time in martial arts. When you understand martial arts, that it's more than just winning a trophy or punching and kicking, that it has a lot more other things. It can do a lot for your personal life as well.
Thanks, Hanshi. And I want to go to you, Coach Ashton, in 1 second. But Hanshi, I want to break this open one more because we all know at the high speeds, the high levels, the fighting, yes, even the most, I'm doing my kata at the front edge, but I can go to the park next to me and teach a white belt, a Hajidachi, and still have a totally clear mind. So, what is it about even the slower version that gives it that moving meditation? And I'll just ask you, Hanshi Legacy, why do you think even the slower stuff works?
Well, I got to try to explain it this way. Whether it's small or big. So I always tell Wendy, my wife, I always say to her, I don't like this certain food. And she says, well, just try a little bit. I don't like it. Well, just try a little bit. So I say to her, well, would you eat poop? And she goes, no. I said, oh, just try a little bit. So, and this is a true story. So something that powerful, you just, even that a little bit, it's non-stationary meditation. It takes over your entire body, mind, and spirit. And even then, you're still working out in the now with them. So it shuts everything else out. There's no room for sadness, happiness. That's why you should just have I call poker face, and let everything be in the now. I hope I answered that properly.
Like goosebumps answered it. Coach, I want to come back to you. Before we get back to your story, I see you really connecting with this idea of the moving meditation. Maybe you've thought about it this way, maybe you haven't, but what is this for you? This idea?
Sorry, could you repeat that? My son just came around and was distracting me.
Oh, I love it. No, I just see when Hanshi's talking about this moving meditation, this Zen state. Zen's a word I've never heard in the BJJ room, but you seem to really be connecting with this idea. And I just want to give you the last word on this before we come back to your more linear history.
I really do connect with that because you really can hit that flow roll. So I don't know how familiar everyone is here with the idea of flow rolling. Is it? Yeah? Okay. So there is a state when you are grappling someone and you say, I just want to flow roll. And it's basically one of those Zen states where you can go, and it's actually, I feel like it's kind of harder than a normal roll because you are at a constant pace the whole time and you're just constantly moving from spot to spot, rather than stopping and thinking and waiting and analyzing. But you hit kind of a Zen zone in the flow roll, and it has, I think, a greater impact on the outcome of how you're feeling afterwards. So absolutely. So that's where my mind went when he was talking about Zen. I went, yeah, that's exactly where it happens when I'm flow rolling people. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Talk to us then about going to university, how you carried on your training, how learning more things and opening your mind helped your martial arts. Break that time open for us.
Oh, yeah. I actually quickly found out that you can't or shouldn't do rugby and high level jujitsu at the same time. Um, so I was varsity rugby for University of Toronto and for McGill. Um, but when I did McGill, because it was my first degree, I was on the varsity for the first year, and I was trying to do both, and realized quickly with a concussion that you can't. And so I had to let jujitsu actually take a back seat for a year. And then I came back full swing in my second year university, because I realized that it's where my heart lays is actually jujitsu, not the rugby. But I ended up going back and a few years later at University of Toronto and playing rugby there. Um, but I think it's again, it has, if we're just going to circle back to that whole when you're doing that sport and the stress and the constant learning you're doing in the classroom and during university, you have this like books on books of knowledge that you have to memorize and you have to know, and you have these exams that are worth 60-70% of your entire grade, and the stress is so much. That's what got me through that entire time of my life. Was I was incredibly stressed out. I needed something to release that stress, and that's where jujitsu came into, and it carried me through, and it's probably the reason why I graduated, to be honest.
Well, I love that you said that because I think a lot of people misconstrue being busy with time to not do the things that help you be busy, right? Like Sensei Suino, I see you nod along with that. Go on.
Well, listen, I'm in the middle of a conversation right now with one of my young judo phenoms. He's from a very ambitious family. They came from overseas. He's the first kid to go to University of Michigan. Um, he wants to get an undergrad degree and then go on into medicine. It's his first year of college, and he's already talking about being too busy to train. And I'm actually going to meet with him tomorrow and have this conversation with him. And of course, if he goes that path, there's nothing I can do. But I want to impress upon him that my dojo, JMAC, is filled with high performing doctors, lawyers, administrators, entrepreneurs, company owners who many of whom spend hours in the dojo. It's not a zero sum game.
No.
I think you get more back. I mean, you know my story. I got through law school while running a dojo. Um, uh, it I actually think it's better. I think the sum of the parts is greater. So if I responded to that, it's because of that reason. I'm in the midst of this conversation now with somebody who I think it'd be a tragedy if he stops training because he feels too busy in college. And I honestly think he won't do as well.
Well, I appreciate that. And before I knew I wanted to be an actor, although I was acting at night in plays and doing karate on other nights and then fitting my studying in, I was like, I got to get these better grades if I want to go to law school or med school. So I dropped out of a play. I got the worst grades I've ever gotten in my life. I didn't know what to do with the extra time, but also I was getting fed by those extracurriculars. And of course, when we dig into martial arts the way we all have, it's not extracurricular anymore. But I do think that people, like, the old phrase, right? If you want something done, give it to the busiest person you know, because they're the ones in that flow state, coach. So wait, let me just touch on rugby before we go on to your post education. Rugby, you've got community, you've got the physicality, you're in your body, you've got goal oriented stuff. It doesn't not overlap, but what was it that made you go, my heart's over here in something similar? What made you sustain the BJJ more, let's say, than the rugby, which could have ticked the same boxes if you wanted it to?
This might upset some people, but honestly, it's the culture. The culture around martial arts versus the culture around those kind of sports. And I'm not saying it all the cultures or all the rugby teams are like this, but there was a very heavy drinking, partying culture that I didn't thrive in. I loved it. I didn't thrive in it. Like when that was put on me, like it was super fun. I enjoyed it a lot, but I ended up being put on probation my first semester of McGill because I was failing everything because I was drinking and partying and doing rugby too much. And I wasn't able to balance my life. Where you flip that on my second year, I'm getting 80s, like A's and doing incredibly well, but I was like training to do Abu Dhabi trials for jujitsu, like still high level. Um, so I really think it would have boiled down to the culture for me and the type of people that you kind of surround yourself with. Like you said, actually, what was just mentioned here is like you are on the mats with people of all different professions and ambitions and everything. So you get to pick and choose who you get to spend time with, actually, whether in rugby, everyone's there for rugby. And that's the number one focus, where jujitsu or another martial art, that's not the case.
Well, it's funny because I just was going to ask you, and I actually do want to go around the horn on this because we all have athletics in our background that aren't martial arts. And is that what you think the difference is, that you actually do get to pick within a class who you're with, or what else do you think it is?
Yeah, I honestly think, and the culture. So, like, you're still going to get the people who are going to go out and party after a class and go to the bars and drink and whatever. But there's also other people who are going to want to just hang out and maybe watch a movie, or you have the morning jujitsu class people who are like, we're doing this before work to get a pep in our step. So you really have so many different personalities. You really do get that choice of individuals that you get to spend your time with.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Sensei Dolphin, let's go to you. You've got sports in your background at a high level before martial arts and maybe even included during that time. What do you think's the difference with the culture?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a very interesting question, Sean. I can say that when I ran track and played football and did things, I did a lot of drugs and drank a lot of booze and did a lot of partying.
Yeah.
And that all slowed down when I did martial arts to like, I don't want to say to a grinding halt because I still like to have a good time. But um, I think in martial arts, I knew I could go somewhere with it. And for me to go somewhere with it, I need to devote myself in a particular way to doing it. And these other things were going to actually slow the progress down, not help. And when I was playing football, I never thought about smoking weed as slowing me down in the next game or running track. I never thought of it that way, but I did when I came to martial arts. The interesting thing is in university too, when I was in university doing martial arts, just that community of people, it was like I like to be around them because I was so like obsessed with martial arts. We didn't want to go drink and talk about it. We wanted to have coffee before, chat about what the training session was going to be like, get your ass in there and do the training. And then when you left, you wanted to linger and talk about what you just had done and figure out how to do it more and better. Um, I didn't have that with other athletics. I just really didn't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe that's the combination of my size and that mentality is why I never became a professional athlete in some other sport. Um, but I train as hard as a professional athlete does. So it's not, I don't know, like that's just different. Yeah, it's really weird. It's a great question.
Yeah, I'm gonna chip in on this one for myself. The one thing I loved immediately, because I was, high level in high school sports. I made the varsity volleyball team. I walked away from it because I was gonna ride the pine, and that's when I found karate that week. I do find that even though it's so communal, it's still an individual pursuit. So I found that I wasn't expected to blend in with this all the haircuts the guys had on the teams and all the shirts they were wearing. Like it was, you could, but it wasn't expected. And there was something about those sports where it was expected. But the other thing is, and Hanshi, you talked about this in my first month, and I was hooked. I was already hooked, but doesn't matter what you do out there. In here, you wear your gi, and nobody cares. And I do like the anonymity of the outfit itself. And I know no gi is real popular these days, and jujitsu has more colorful gis and stuff, but doesn't matter whether you're wearing a Rolex or a Timex, you walk into that gym and you're just wearing a gi and you're good or you're not. So even though it's communal, it's individual. And I always liked that I could be an individual, but ironically, my individuality got to fade because of the uniform and the way of being. So I really dug that. Hanchi Legacy, where do you go with this? You've got sports in your background and you were really good at them. What is it about the cultures that you have found to be different?
Well, it's I'm going to go again. I'm just going to make a statement. If you learn how to play baseball, doesn't mean that you can play hockey. And if you learn how to play football, doesn't mean that you can play basketball. So what you're doing is learning a sport and having a fun doing it. When you train in martial arts, you start training yourself internally. It comes from the inside and starts going out. So, say you've been training 5 or 10 years and you get into it, any one of those three sports, you'll be better at it because you're a better person. So, the martial arts is a deeper rooted way of training than playing sports. It's fun to play sports. You get in real good shape. You get a lot more money for playing professional sports, but it works in a different way. Your Zen or martial arts is meant to build and cure the human being and to make them a better individual. And I say this often, martial arts is trying to make the world a better place one by one. So it's not about sports. It's not about anything else. It's about you. It's um, the maintenance for a human being.
Thanks, Hanshi. And we have talked a lot on this show about a guy like GSP who went into sports as a martial artist and emerged from the UFC still a martial artist. And he didn't have that downtime. He didn't get out of shape. You see him in videos. He's the same guy he was 20 years ago, just grown. And I think he's a beautiful example of a martial artist first and a sportsman second. And you can see how much respect he's garnered and how easily he shifted from one back to the other. Sensei Suino, where do you go with this?
I've been really racking my brain on this topic. I think everything that's been said so far is absolutely right. But one other aspect, I was a high school gymnast, did pretty well at that. I'm a retired avid golfer. I played a lot of golf for 20 years, and wanted to be good at it. But one thing I noticed about both those cultures, and maybe it's just the people I ended up being around, is I don't know how to describe it. My relationships in martial arts are so deep. There, people in martial arts become like my family. I never felt that connection. In gymnastics, people were just not. Even though they're both individual sports in a way, martial arts and gymnastics. There was never that sense of family. It was always about, okay, we're all doing this together. I'm gonna see if I can better you. In golf, it would just felt like a very uh, antisocial is not the right word, just a real status conscious group of
Not
people, right? Um, as much as I love the game of golf, I do not like the culture of golf. And as much as I love the activity of gymnastics, I didn't like the culture. So for me, yeah, there's never been that sense of tribe. And maybe it's, as we've talked about before, maybe when you find your tribe, that's where you belong. Maybe that's why I experienced it differently.
Suino Setsu, when you're saying that, I think about none of us would think that we are greater than the martial arts. We would think that we are a part of the martial arts. Whereas I think in a lot of sports, people want to transcend that art. They want to say they're the best one, they're better than the actual thing. I'm the best golfer. Like, no, like, whereas no matter how good you are in martial arts, you're never going to be better than that actual thing. You're just going to be a part of it.
Yeah, there's no end game, right? Doesn't matter what you win. You're still, it's just like you said earlier, right? How's your jujitsu going? Oh, it sucks. Right?
Well, it's funny too, because I have talked about this. The only other thing that I was younger and I was a little more anxious and internal in ways I didn't realize, but ballet offered something very similar to me, and that's a classical art. And that's the first classical teacher I had. And she's the first of many who said, I don't care who you think you are, you're late to class, go home. As opposed to swagger and all that other stuff that's great and entertaining, but it doesn't, again, that teacher was my first, Hanshi, you were my second, who said, this art is here to change you. You're not here to change it. So it's funny because the only other parallel I do have is ballet, and it is a classical art. Um, Coach Sawitsky, let's come back. You graduate, you're letting the rugby go. Talk to us about the next little while in your life.
That's kind of when like after McGill, my first degree, I joined the forces for the first time. Um, but that was a really short stint. So I only did basic training. So you join the forces, you get a trade, and then you go off to basic training. And then once you're done basic training, then you go off to do either the next phase of basic or trade training. The last week of my basic training, I ended up telling my staff, like all the instructors, that I was going to voluntarily release, which what we called as a VR. And they were all very, very upset because you can win 4 awards during basic training. Top marksman, top female or male athletes, there's 2 there, camaraderie, and top candidate. So you've scored the highest marks in all the tests. So like throughout the entire thing. I won 3 of those 4 awards, and the reviewing officer coming around on the parade was really upset with the idea of me leaving the forces because I had potential, and it really did show that that was kind of my career path and where I needed to be. Unfortunately, I was just not in the right trade, and the only way for me to get into the right trade was to actually leave and come back. So that's when I went, I'm going to leave, but I promise I will be back in 3 years once I finish my master's, which I've already been approved for. And then I'll reapply into the construction engineering like world. We call it CE. And I'll see you then. So I peaced out, went, did my master's, and during that entire time, that's when I was a purple belt, and that is the most training and the most competition I did in that time after. So I went to McGill, I joined the forces, I left the forces, and then I started competing. And then I got like, I was in it. And I like every day, I was training up to 3 times a day, morning, lunch, and evening. So I got a job after my master's, which connected us. The company that I was working for was in the same building as a club that I was doing jujitsu at. So I would literally go to work I'd go to the building at like 6 a.m., do jujitsu for an hour and a half, go up the stairs to work, at lunch, come back down the stairs, train some more, and it was insane. But it was an incredible time in my life. That's when I traveled around the world the most. Colombia, Sweden, Portugal, California a couple times. Like it was just a wild time. That's when I lived my life, was during my master's, just after it, and before I joined the forces for good.
That sounds like heaven on earth.
It was.
Yeah. Sensei Suino,
Sounds
I know
like
you,
destiny. That sounds
yeah,
like destiny.
it
Yeah.
really does. Sensei Suino, I know you've had that kind of intensity of training, especially in Japan. Is there anywhere you want to go with this thinking, this type of living? Break this open for us, Sensei Suino, with some questions or thoughts.
Well, it's funny how that works. It sounds like, Coach, you kind of had a similar experience to mine. I was training often as much as 6 or 8 hours a day in Japan while working, while living in a strange culture. Um, uh, it's almost like we talked about before. The training itself is immersive, but you get into this life cycle that's immersive, and it somehow works. You're doing things that, if you were to say from the outside, oh my gosh, how could anybody do that much training, that much working, all that stuff? But you get into this role, it just works itself out. It's like getting better grades, even though you're training. So I can't quite explain it, but there's definitely a role, and I think it has a lot to do with giving yourself up to that experience. Just going, this is what I'm doing now. No reservations, go, right?
So let me ask you, Sensei Suino, and then I'll ask you again, Coach. So for somebody who's younger, how do they commit to that? Right? Like honestly, I'm like my body would take some version of 6 hours a day for a week, and then it would go, hey, dude, not like my knees would just say, no, you got to do a bit less. So for somebody who's young enough that they can do that level of training, let's start with you, Sensei Suino. What would you tell them to do? Because somebody watching this show is going to be frothing at the mouth at the thought of this, but not maybe be sure where to start, or they might feel like there's a barrier. What would you say to them?
Well, we could do a whole show on this, but what comes to mind is 2 things. One is you got to find that passion and commitment, or maybe it comes to you. I don't know. I was the idealistic kid when I went over to Tokyo. I thought I was going to become a samurai. Like I had no problem getting immersed in it. I was there for it. Um, but the training part of it, the physical part is you got to scaffold it. Sensei Dauphin and I talk about this all the time. Given our age and everything else, the shit we do is insane. Nobody should do it. But if you're going to, you got to stack it. You train yourself up, right? You build your basics and you work on them all the time and you never stop. You give yourself a little recovery time and then you do the next and the next and the next. And eventually, if you're lucky and a little bit smart, maybe you have good mentors around you, you can train more than 99% of the people in the world. And it's just difficult, but not impossible.
Coach Ashton, as Sensei Dauphin said, maybe a little destiny, but also drive. So, what would you tell somebody who's like, how do I do what you're doing? And they have the body to do it.
Oh, I honestly, it's in you, but you also have to find the support as well in the people around you. So if you surround yourself with the people who are going to encourage you and build you up, that's going to just take you that little bit farther. And people who are rooting for you in your corner. If you have people who aren't, I'm not afraid to unfriend people because it's like I don't need that in my life. So I really think it's super important to have the supportive individuals around you who are also lifting you up and encouraging you. And you know what? If I lost that day, that's okay. I have lots of people saying like I can continue doing it. So in my heart of hearts, I think you need to find a supportive community. And drop the negatives. I think that's a really hard thing for people to do. And I think people need to do it more because the negatives can really weigh you down. The company that I worked for at the time actually gave me a bonus every month to train, and they sponsored my trips. So it was just like, I found it was honestly like just the dream time. I'm still living that dream like in a different world. We can talk about that if we have time, but it showed me that not only there are people in your life that you need to build yourself up with, but also find like a passion and a company that's also going to allow you to afford the training because it's not cheap, especially in Toronto, or those big cities. So find that support financially and in your community to make sure that you can actually sustain yourself.
I love that, and just really briefly, when I was a young actor and I was doing theater in Toronto and it wasn't paying a ton, my boss at Eastside Mario's pulled me aside. He goes, "You're really doing this, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Your job is always safe. If you ever need to leave last minute to act, your job is always waiting for you. Let me know how we can help." And even that alone gave me an ease when I got that last minute audition and I had to run across town. It was beautiful support. Sensei Dauphin, you added one word in our chat because this topic, we've been going back and forth. What do you think?
Yeah, Srino Sensei said passion and commitment, and I think it's really the better word is obsession, right?
Yeah.
You become obsessed with something and you're willing to put everything else aside for that thing. And listen, I can say it at the highest level, right? Like Sense of Legacy he's the godfather to my children. And when he was going to take me away to go fight in Panama, my young daughter is holding on to my leg saying, "No, daddy, don't go, don't go." And like, I love that kid. I love Sydney. But yeah, I push her off of my leg and get in the car with Sense of Legacy and go to the airport and fly to another country to do this thing. I don't know, that's passion and commitment, but maybe it's a bit of an obsession too, right? Like, let's call it a healthy obsession.
Um, Hanchi Legacy, let's finish with you on this topic and just to prompt a little, and maybe you want to go somewhere else with it, but am I wrong that when you were with your first instructor and he let you stay at the dojo, boredom drove a lot of your 8 hours a day of basics?
I had written down here, Ashton had said passion, and then Randy used another word. Very simply, it's easier to do something or your job if you like it. It's really all that simple, right? You don't before you know what it is, uh, or before you run into it, you don't have that passion. It's just when you run into it, and then once you find out what it is, then you're taken away by it. So I think we all explained the same thing, but just in very different ways. I just sort of made it simple. If you like something, you really like it. If you find some food that you really like, it's easy to eat it every day. It's the same thing with having a passion or for doing your job. You know, and doing martial art um, for the 10% or maybe less who take martial arts, it becomes a way of life. It becomes your life. So it's not easy to give up, nor do you give it because it's you. Who can you love more than you, right? That's why you do everything.
Thanks, Hanchi. I mentioned knees over toes in the pre-chat because I blew out my meniscus, and my trainer always says the weights is the work so you can have the fun doing your martial arts. It's like I like the gym okay, but it's the work I put in so that my body lets me do the fun stuff. Uh, Coach, we are going to get to some of the things you wanted to talk about for sure, but you did mention living a dream world in a different way. And we do have time to talk about that. So what does that mean for you? What is that?
Well, I came back to the military, obviously. But now I get paid to do jujitsu, and I also get paid to do competition in jujitsu, and it's all happening again. So, in a different light, I've chosen another career that's supportive of that pathway and that journey, and so much so that the military is now standing up like base grappling teams. So in Kingston here, we're actually like we're grassrooting a 22-person team, and we're having like regional tournaments all across Canada, military only. But the fact that we're having that is one showing how big jujitsu is slash we call it grappling in the forces, how big jujitsu has become and how popular it is, so much so that it's become an actual registered sport for the Canadian military. And I just think that's phenomenal. So now I get to coach and train and get paid for it in my career again. So it's really quite full circle and incredible.
That is incredible. Now, when you talk about grappling, I assume there's some wrestlers in there, some judo players, or some other types. Is it a jiu-jitsu rule set? And how do you find going against the other non-BJJ grapplers who come in from a different door?
Uh, it's still grappling, so we still go by a lot of all the ground rules that we have as jujitsu. The stand-up is always going to be a little bit challenging, especially if you have those judo black belts. If I ever face a judo black belt, I already know that I'm down 2 points because they're gonna flip me on my butt. Like I already know that. But you get me on the ground, there's gonna be some tussle. So I think that's where it lays, is that stand up is going to be a little bit more challenging, especially with those stand up sports. But as soon as you hit the ground, grappling takes over, and then that's where everything kind of gets reassessed.
And then my other question is, the jiu-jitsu community, especially if you're in Toronto, but also I'm sure in Kingston, like any major city has a big jiu-jitsu community. Do you find that the military community ends up being smaller, or is it sort of a cherry-picked group of the better ones anyways? You see what I'm asking? Like I can go into my club on a Friday and just be training with world champs. Do you find, and maybe you don't want to say this, but the military grappling easier or harder than that club tournament environment?
I actually find it harder. um, because now not only do you have grapplers, you have military mindsets, which are a lot of them are very stubborn. And they're incredibly fit because we also get paid to be fit. So we get time in a day of our 8 hours or 9 hours we work. We're normally given the first 2 or the last 2 hours of our day to go do physical training. And a lot of people, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of people in the forces take that time and they go to the gym, and we have phenomenal spaces to do so. Like we have 3 like matted spaces at the gym here in Kingston. So if one spot's taken up by judo, we get to go to the other spot. So they've really opened the doors for it. And so you don't really have an excuse not to train as a military person. So we get paid, we get the time, and we have the space. Whereas when you have a different profession, you're now going to a gym that has restricted hours, restricted times, and all that stuff. So it's just a little bit more challenging for your everyday person to do that. Whereas it's a little bit open door for us. So I would find military people are a little bit more challenging to fight now.
I feel like this is the best recruiting poster there's ever been. You get paid, you've got the time, you've got the space. Like
Yeah.
it's
And
better
like,
than those ads with choppers.
yeah, and like we just got a huge raise. So like yeah, I don't see where I need to like promote more.
Yeah, right
We
on.
need you as an Uncle Sam
Yeah.
outfit. Coach Ashton wants you. That's
Um, Coach, are you ready for your 10 questions we ask all of our guests?
Sure.
Okay, so you've got 10 minutes. You can take 10 minutes to answer one question, or you can answer all 10 as you wish. We ask that you answer impulsively, but feel free to expand on your answer.
Okay.
You look nervous. I love it. What is your favorite martial arts technique?
I would say the crucifix.
ooh.
Yeah.
Who is the most influential martial artist in your life?
That I personally know or who I follow.
In your life, yeah, that you know.
So okay, we have to like I know them or I met them once.
You can do both or either.
Okay. So the like Marcelo Garcia, it has always been my like number one idol in jiu-jitsu, and I was able to actually train and meet him in New York City when I was a purple belt when I was training all over, and that was incredible. So he's probably my most influential, and like I play a lot in like stemmed off his game. So I studied him a lot just to train and use his techniques. So he's probably my most influential individually or like personally. I would say Marco Costa. Yeah, he really has taken the coach title to a whole new level. He would be there on weekends and training us and camps and like if he's in my corner, I'm gonna do better. Absolutely. So he would be my person that I would say as a martial artist, my most influential for sure.
And maybe you've already answered this for yourself, but who do you think is the most influential martial artist alive today?
So I wouldn't say it's Marcelo Garcia. I would now put that on Fiona Davis because she's rocking it. Like competition, blazing the road for females and grappling, like the whole grappling industry, like fighting for equal pay. Like she has been incredible. So I'd say she was for that question, I'd put her there.
What's your favorite martial arts movie?
That's a tricky one. I'm gonna. Would you say John Wick is a
I
martial
did.
arts movie?
When I was
Okay.
asked this question, I did.
Okay.
That's where I
Okay.
went.
The first one. I have to say the first one though, because like the whole emotional dog thing, like you can't get better than that.
Well, and this is your time, but after that, they got almost superhero-ish. That first one,
Yeah.
guy could actually do that in a real world.
Yeah.
I'm with
Yeah.
you on that, the dog and that. What is the best thing martial arts has done for the world?
It's brought in a lot of different people together in the sense of you can go to almost any country now and train jujitsu or train a martial art. You can find a club. So, for example, I went to Latvia as a deployment and I trained there. I actually taught in Latvia, like 2 classes. So it's bridging the gaps of that kind of level of humanity, which I think you're not going to get really in a lot of stuff. So I think that's my answer for that.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh. Hmm. I think I would tell my younger self that keep working hard. It's going to get better.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
You helped a lot of people.
If any actor in the world could play you in a movie, living or dead, who would it be?
Uh, I don't know her last name, but do you know Gina from Mandalorian? She's,
Oh yeah, Gina Gershon.
yeah, her.
Legit. Uh, and our last two questions come as a pair. What is your
Okay.
greatest achievement and what is your greatest regret?
My greatest achievement is my family. I've built quite the loving and caring and awesome family, so I think that's my biggest achievement. My biggest regret, probably not starting my family sooner. Because I had my son later 20, and like I was 29, turning 30, and honestly, I kind of wish I had him sooner.
And this isn't really about martial arts, but you did mention having a bit of a fractured family growing up. Did the martial arts help you create the environment that you'd maybe always been looking for, or did you feel those are separate ideas?
Well, I think we all know the whole what do you go fraternization of gym people happens.
Sure.
So I was I was in that once. I was with somebody from a club and it ended very badly. It turned out that he was pretty psychotic and a sociopathic liar, and it shattered my world. And with that, it came with jujitsu. Um, it kind of put a sour taste in my mouth with jujitsu too, but I got over that because I dissociated those two connections. And if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have met my now husband. So coming out of that relationship and continuing on with jujitsu um, has fostered my capabilities of opening my heart up to creating a beautiful, loving relationship.
Love that.
Mhm.
Talk to us about your Indigenous leadership program that you work with.
Sure, another promo.
Let's do it.
Um, so I work, I just got posted to the Royal Military College as the squadron commander of the Indigenous Leadership Opportunity Year. So it takes Indigenous people, so Inuit, First Nations, and Métis from all over Canada, and they bring them to RMC for 1 year. They get paid to go to school. They don't have to owe any time or anyone for that entire year. So it's just 1 year of just having fun, essentially, going to school, doing culture activities because we bring culture. Like we go to powwows, we go to all these really cool cultural events. We have elders, all this really neat stuff. They learn how to work with weapons. They get go in the gas huts. So they have this really cool experience, and it's just for 1 year. On top of that, they can also join varsity teams and varsity sport and grappling and all that stuff. So it's really, really cool.
It's amazing. And
Hmm.
I love the idea of no owing back. It's just
Nope.
available.
Yep.
Yeah. I definitely think we need more of that. So I have one question for you. We're nearing the end of our time, but I want to ask you, what do you think is the greatest barrier to learning in BJJ, right? Like there's something in each art that someone sort of has to get beyond before they can become great at it. What do you think is the thing in BJJ that people bump against the most and they have to get used to the most, or what is it?
I'm curious if your martial arts also have it, but as soon as someone gets their blue belt, it's it's a coined term called blue belt blues. Um, and as soon as someone gets in it and if they can't get out of it, you've lost that practitioner. They're not coming back. It's basically they've learned so much that they now understand the movements, but they haven't practiced it enough to be efficient at them. Um, and they get frustrated that they're not getting better. And then they plateau for a long time, sometimes a long time, sometimes not that long. They'll plateau for a little while, and then they lose the liking of it or they lose that passion and then they kind of drop off. So they have to get past the blue belt blues. And every single time I've promoted someone to blue belt, I said, this is going to happen to you. You can say it's not, but I guarantee it will. It depends on you for how long and if you can get yourself out of it. And if you ever do get into it, talk to other people about one. After it, I actually took quite a long break at that time. And I got back. It was scary to come back as a blue belt, now ranked, and step back on the mats. But you just have to get through it. And that's what they have to do, is get through that the little hump.
I love that answer. Hanshi Legacy, what do you think is the equivalent in all the time you've taught students of a blue belt blues, or maybe there isn't one? What do you think's the barrier that people have to get okay with to keep going in karate?
Well, with us, I believe from just watching is when you're a purple belt and you're getting a 32 brown belt in there, that's going to make or break you because, we have 3 levels of brown belt and it's going to take you a year or two in each one, at least a year in each one. So you're looking at 3 years even before you're going to be considered for a black belt after all the training you've already done. So I believe that's probably somewhere about in the same area. It's that, yeah, you've learned all this, but now it demands more and you're learning more. And at that time, you're asking more questions because before you weren't asking any questions because you didn't know anything about it. Now that you're starting to learn about it and you hit that purple or brown belt, you have to learn the curriculum, plus you have to have the answers to your questions answered, and you have to understand them. So that's where that same mix-up comes in your head, and you're either strong enough to get through it or you're not. It's to be a storm.
Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Suino, I see you pondering deeply.
Trying to find the equivalent, in our programs, our Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and Judo programs. I feel like that is what probably we call either Gokyu or Yonkyu, right? Fifth Q or fourth Q. In our school, those are green belt ranks. Yonkyu is a tough rank. Yonkyu, we put a brown stripe on your green belt because now you're a candidate for brown belt. And you've probably been there at least 2 years, 2.5 years, and uh, we lose a few people there, but people spin their wheels there for a while because they know enough to practice what they know, and without some kind of drive or mentorship, they're probably not going to go forward. Yeah, I was just trying to find that. I was just trying to find that place in our curriculum, and I think that's about where it is.
Thanks, Sensei. Sensei Dolphin, I know you have some thoughts on this.
In the karate world, at least in our dojo, I think they need to embrace the fact that they're going to get roughed up a lot. And that's going to be uncomfortable, right? Like, if you think you're coming to the dojo and it's going to be a cakewalk, or you're going to reach some level where it's like miraculously it's going to be a cakewalk now at this level, you got one foot out the door and the other one on a banana peel because you need to embrace the suck, right? Like you're gonna be getting roughed up. I still get roughed up after 36 years. I go fight with these guys, I still get roughed up. And I think that's one of the things, at least in our club, where a lot of people wash out because they're waiting for the time when that's not going to happen, and it's never not gonna happen. If I'm talking about, like, say with Suino Sensei and Iaido, I would think a lot of people get to a certain level where they just really can see the path in front of them, and they're like, okay, it's just more of this over and over. Okay, I'm I'm popping the suba and I'm getting my elbows together, and it's just more of this over and over and over again. And that's not, they got to get past the fact that that's actually what it is, and that's where the growth comes from, is just repetitively doing this thing. There's not some new magical thing that's going to all of a sudden pop up. It's just getting better at what you already know.
For me, it's specific. It's less about ranks, and you've talked about this a lot, Sensei Dolphin. With karate, it was just life changes. Moving away, being far from my teachers, at one point being 3,000 miles from my teachers, other lifestyle things showing up, some not so positive. So that for me in karate was the like, are you going to get over this or not? For me in BJJ, it was purple belt, and it was simply because I started to be able to put a game together, but I started to get injured a little more. I was nearing 50, and it was just like, are you going to work through these injuries, but not just work through these injuries, change your game to suit, you know, poor structure with your knee will never be a good thing, but when you're 22, you might get away with it a while. So it's not actually great jujitsu because it's not leverage or structure that's great, but I had to get real quiet about it, and that was very challenging, you know. And I get why they say if you get your purple, you're probably not quitting. But for me, it was more the brown. Like by the time I got the brown, I worked through changing my body and changing how my body does this thing. Any last thoughts you want to share about that, Coach, before we go around the horn and say goodnight? And the way we do that is we all talk about our time with you, and then you'll have the last word.
Uh, I think you're spot on about the next hump in challenges for at least jujitsu is you do start getting a little bit more injured in purple and brown belt. And you have to take more time to heal. And I think a lot of people don't take the time to heal and they get perpetually more injured to the point where they need to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you to Robert Shlumsky, Justin Shea, Andrei Sedashev, Josh Kitchens, Christiana Landol, Dridi Guliani, Stavros Stavroulias, and Emily Ruth Driscoll for running the behind the scenes, getting the photos up, putting the word out, helping with all the stuff. And this show exists because they help us make it exist. So thank you to all of them. And let's start with Around the Horn. Hunchy Legacy, what do you want to say about our time tonight?
Well, it was very interesting. I don't know very much about jujitsu. I admit that to myself because I was a bit older getting started. Um, and I see how you appreciate it, and it was good to hear that you're um, you're in the military, and I'm also part native. I never mentioned that before, but I'm a Mi'kmaq, part Mi'kmaq, and yeah, I like your love for jujitsu. I like the way you've blended with it, and I appreciate you coming to our show. Thank you.
Thanks, Hanchi. Sensei Suino?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I took a ton of notes. I'll leave most of that to Randy because he is even better at that than I am. I love the conversation about obsession and immersive experience and how that kind of counterbalances other things in life and maybe actually makes us better at things, even if we devote less overall time to them. Um, I'm really, it's the first time I've heard Hachi's story about eating a little poop, so that was kind of a nice one. Um, and you know, it's so cool, you know, Coach, you speak about living in a dream world, you know, getting paid to do jujitsu and you're now up there with one of my other idols, a Japanese instructor named Sato Tadayuki Sensei. He has the second coolest job in the world to yours. He's a teacher of martial arts at Meiji University in Tokyo. And so his job is to learn about martial arts, teach about martial arts, train in martial arts, and he gets paid to do it. So now he's number two. You've knocked him off the pedestal.
Thank you, Sensei. Sensei Dofat?
I'm so happy that you came on, Coach Ashton. I like when we talked about competing and you said the anxiety of that experience, whether you win or whether you lose, you're going to come away with something more than actually doing it. And yeah, I competed a lot. Interestingly, I stopped competing for a long time until I got back into BJJ. And then when I got into BJJ, I was like, hey, I'm going to try this a little bit. So I've been competing at least once or twice a year at my belt level. And it's just kind of, I approach it differently now, but it is very fun and it does create some anxiety and I grow from it. So I think it's really cool that your family watched Jackie Chan movies together. And that was one of the things that like brought you into martial arts. Everybody loves Jackie Chan and he's probably one of the most influential. He's on the list anyway. When you were 16, your family won the lottery, and then you really won the lottery because you got into martial arts because of it. Um, And I don't want this to be a whole big indigenous thing, but my mom wouldn't let me do martial arts, and my indigenous grandma gave me $100 so I could pay my dues to Sense Legacy, and that's how I got into martial arts because my mom was like, "Nope, I'm not paying for this." And my grandma, my indigenous grandma who was living with us, came up and gave me this money and said, "Don't tell your mom I gave you this." So
Oh,
yeah. Um, you said the reason why you graduated was because of BJJ. And again, a bit of a kindred spirit there. I think I would have just packed it in and gone back to Windsor from Western if it wasn't for the fact that I was doing karate and I never missed. Even the night before an exam, I went to class because I just knew I would do better in that exam if I did it. Um, I really liked when we talked about the culture of sports versus the culture of arts, martial arts, whether that be ballet, jiu-jitsu, karate versus rugby or track or I really like that. I hope people go back and listen to what we talked about when it comes to that because I think we unbroke a lot of things there. Um, Training 3 times a day. Your company had BJJ in the building, so you were able to just go downstairs and train before, during, and after work. Again, I think that's a destiny. I think somebody, God or somebody said, Coach Ashton is supposed to be a BJJ practitioner. I also, one thing you said that I think is really powerful is that you're not afraid to unfriend people. I think today, a lot of people are living their lives trying to meet some other person's expectation rather than their own. And they get, you know, a drowning person will drown the person trying to save them. And I think those are wise words for people to listen to, right? Don't be afraid to unfriend somebody who's dragging you down and not supporting you, and there's no reciprocity. Your 10 questions, they were new ones. I like what you said. Crucifix, that position sucks. Marcelo Garcia, Coach Costa. I like what you said about Coach Costa when you said, if he's in my corner, I'm going to do better. That's a real coach, isn't it? And that's a real mentor when that happens. Coach Fiona's amazing. I love the John Wick movies. I like when you said your greatest achievement is your family and that you should have started it sooner, right? So, yeah, this is a great discussion, great time with you, Coach Ashton. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, Coach, I get to chat a lot throughout the show, but I just want to say I really love the way you just simplified everything. Your job, your martial arts, and your family integrate. And one of my little sort of hallmarks of something that's better as opposed to worse is less moving parts. And it sounds like you figured out ways to have a nice flow with everything you do. And I'm gonna take that and even look at my life this week and go, where can I do that even a little bit more? So how do you want to say goodnight to everybody listening? It's your platform.
well, I just want to first of all thank every single one of you for having me present on the show. It's a huge honor to be in such a presence with each and every one of you. You have your own accomplishments and you're all individually amazing. So thanks for having me and taking the time to just get to know myself and I get to know you and your perspectives. A lot of your perspectives were incredible and were spot on with a lot of like my moral compass as well. So that was really fun. And one thing I want to take a note is you all use last names. It's very military. So you're saying Legacy, Suino, Dolphin. It's like, okay, I think that's really cool how that kind of overlaps there. So I think I just want to thank you and I appreciate the time and energy, everybody who's put the energy into making this a thing. So that's it.
Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for watching and tuning in.